Huz, I thought he was on a business trip until I saw the honeymoon photos. The notification popped up on my phone at 2:47 a.m., jarring me from restless sleep. Marcus Chen tagged you in a photo. Half awake, I fumbled for my glasses on the nightstand, squinting at the bright screen in the darkness of our bedroom. The bed beside me was empty as it had been for the past 4 days. David was in Singapore, closing some important merger deal for his law firm, or so I thought. My blood turned to ice as the image loaded. There was my husband of 12 years, sun-kissed and grinning, his arm wrapped around a woman I'd never seen before. She was stunning, all flowing dark hair and perfect teeth, wearing a white sundress that looked suspiciously bridal. Behind them stretched a pristine beach palm trees, swaying in what was clearly not the skyline of Singapore's business district. The caption read, "Congrats to the happy couple, best surprise wedding ever. Maldives love, just married." I sat bolt upright, my heart hammering against my ribs. This had to be some mistake. Some horrible, twisted mistake. But as I clicked through to Marcus's profile, David's college roommate, who I'd always found insufferably smug, more photos appeared. David in a linen suit on the beach, the woman in an actual wedding dress, champagne toasts, a ceremony under an arch of tropical flowers. And in every single photo, my husband looked happier than I'd seen him in years. My hands shook as I scrolled through the timestamps. These were posted just hours ago. While I'd been lying here in Seattle worried about him overworking himself on this deal, he'd been getting married to someone else in the Maldives. I called him immediately, my fingers trembling so badly I had to try 3 times to hit his contact. Straight to voicemail. I tried again, and again. On the 4th attempt, I heard the telltale sound of being sent directly to voicemail. He was declining my calls. A text came through, "In a meeting, everything okay?" The casualness of it, the sheer audacity, made me want to throw my phone across the room. Instead, I screenshot the photos and sent them to him with a single question mark. The typing bubbles appeared and disappeared several times, then nothing. 5 minutes passed. 10. Finally, "Sarah, I can explain." Those 3 words confirmed everything. This wasn't a mistake or a joke or a case of mistaken identity. My husband had actually married another woman while pretending to be on a business trip. I stumbled to the bathroom and barely made it to the toilet before being violently sick. 12 years. We'd been together since college, married for 12 years. We had a house of dog plans for children we kept postponing until the right time. How long had he been planning this? Who was she? How did one even legally marry someone else while already married? My phone buzzed incessantly as I sat on the cold bathroom floor. David calling, texting, the words blurring through my tears. "Please answer. It's not what you think. I never meant for you to find out this way. Sarah, please. Never meant for me to find out this way," as opposed to what a thoughtful conversation over dinner. "Honey, I've got something to tell you. I married another woman while you thought I was in Singapore. Pass the salt." I finally answered on what must have been his 20th call, my voice surprisingly steady. "Is it legal?" What? He sounded breathless, panicked. "The marriage. Is it legal? Because last I checked, bigamy was still a crime in most countries." "Sarah, listen. Is it legal, David?" A pause. "No, it's not legally binding. It was just a ceremony, a symbolic thing. I'm still legally married to you." "Oh, well, thank God for that," I said, laughing bitterly. "I was worried you might have done something really stupid. No, I know how this looks. Do you really? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like my husband faked a business trip to have a destination wedding with another woman. It looks like everyone knew Marcus was there for Christ's sake. Who else? Your brother, your parents." His silence was answer enough. "Your parents knew," my voice cracked. "Janet and Robert, who had me over for dinner just last Sunday, who hugged me goodbye and told me not to worry that David would be home before I knew it. They were there," he admitted quietly. I hung up and threw my phone across the bathroom. It hit the wall with a satisfying crack, the screen splintering into a spiderweb of broken glass, just like my life. The next few hours passed in a blur. I called my sister Emma in New York, sobbing so hard she could barely understand me. She caught the first flight to Seattle. I called in sick to work, knowing there was no way I could face teaching my third graders, while my world was falling apart. I found the whiskey David kept for special occasions and decided this probably qualified. By the time Emma arrived that afternoon, I'd moved past hysteria into a numb kind of shock. She found me on the couch, still in yesterday's pajamas laptop, open to what I'd discovered through some intensive social media stalking. Her name was Meredith Yang. She was 28, a marketing executive at a tech startup, where David's firm had done some legal work. Her Instagram, now hastily set to private, had enough public photos from the past year to paint a picture. Charity galas, where she'd posed alone, but I could spot David's cufflink in the edge of a frame. Weekend trips to wine country, posted the same weekends he'd claimed to be at legal conferences. A photo from 2 months ago of a man's hand wearing a wedding ring, not the one I'd placed on his finger, captioned only with a heart emoji. How long do you think? Emma asked gently, rubbing my back as I scrolled through the evidence of my husband's double life. At least a year, maybe more. I laughed humorlessly. You know what the really pathetic part is? I was happy he was taking this trip. I thought the time apart would be good for us, help us reset. We'd been fighting about kids again, and I actually thought maybe when he got back, we could have a real conversation about our future. This isn't your fault, Sarah. Isn't it? I must have missed something, some sign. Marriages don't just randomly implode. Husbands don't just wake up one day and decide to marry someone else. Emma took the laptop away from me. Stop torturing yourself. He's the one who made these choices, not you. David returned 2 days later, cutting his business trip short. I'd changed the locks, but he still had his key to the garage. I heard him come in that way, calling my name tentatively, like he was approaching a wild animal. I met him in the kitchen, stone cold sober, despite every instinct screaming at me to be drunk for this conversation. He looked terrible, unshaven, red-eyed, wearing the same clothes he'd worn in the beach photos. The clothes he'd gotten married in. Sarah. He took a step toward me and I held up my hand. Stay there. Just explain. Make me understand how this happened. He sank into a chair across from me, the kitchen island between us like a barrier. I met her last year when we were working on the TechStrat acquisition. It wasn't supposed to be anything. Just drinks after a long negotiation, but then I realized I was falling in love with her. The words hit me like physical blows. And instead of, I don't know, getting a divorce like a normal person, you decided to commit bigamy? I didn't plan it, any of it. Meredith didn't even know I was married at first. At first, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. When did she find out, before or after you proposed? He had the decency to look ashamed. After. Jesus Christ, David. I know it's insane, but I was going to tell you. I was going to ask for a divorce when I got back. The wedding thing just happened. Her parents were going to be in the Maldives, and they suggested we come, and suddenly there was this plan, and I couldn't tell her no without explaining everything. So you chose to lie to me instead. I've been trying to find the right time to tell you for months, he said, running his hands through his hair. But you were so happy. Planning that garden renovation, talking about maybe trying for kids next year. How could I destroy that? Oh, so this was for my benefit. I stood up, anger finally breaking through the numbness. You cheated on me, lied to me, married another woman, all to protect my feelings. No, that's not. Get out. Sarah, please, we need to talk about this. The house, the accounts, everything we've built together. Get out. I grabbed the nearest thing, a coffee mug, and hurled it at him. It shattered against the wall behind his head and he flinched. Get out of my house before I call the police and report you for bigamy. He left. I slid down to the floor and finally let myself fall apart completely. The next months were a blur of lawyers' paperwork and painful revelations. It turned out David had been planning his exit for a while. Money had been slowly moved from our joint accounts. The equity he'd insisted on taking out of the house for investments had gone toward a down payment on a condo for him and Meredith. His parents, who I'd loved like my own family, had been helping him hide assets. My lawyer, a shark named Patricia Winters, who specialized in complex marital dissolutions, was both appalled and fascinated by my case. In 30 years of practice, I've never seen someone stupid enough to document their bigamy on social media, she told me. We're going to destroy him. And we did. The threat of criminal charges for bigamy gave us incredible leverage. David ended up giving me the house, most of our savings, and a generous alimony package. His reputation at the firm suffered when word got out. Turns out, judges don't look kindly on lawyers who commit crimes, even symbolic ones. I also sued Marcus for emotional distress after discovering he'd been helping facilitate the affair for months, letting David use his apartment for rendezvous. It was petty, but it felt good. The hardest part wasn't the legal battles or the financial untangling. It was the small things. Learning to sleep in the middle of the bed, coming home to silence instead of his off-key singing in the shower, watching our favorite shows alone, explaining to people why David wasn't at social events anymore, watching their faces shift from confusion to horror to pity as the story unfolded. Some friends chose sides. His law school buddies disappeared overnight, but others surprised me with their support. My principal gave me all the time off I needed. The other teachers at school organized meal deliveries, so I wouldn't have to cook. Even some of David's relatives reached out to express their disgust at his behavior. I found the best therapist money could buy. I could afford it now, thanks to the settlement. Dr. Reeves helped me understand that David's betrayal wasn't about me. It was about his own cowardice, his inability to be honest about what he wanted. He'd rather build an entirely separate life than have one difficult conversation. People who lie to this extent are usually lying to themselves most of all, she told me during one session. He probably convinced himself there would be a perfect moment to come clean away to manage everyone's feelings. Instead, he just kept digging deeper. 6 months after that horrible night, I ran into Meredith at a coffee shop downtown. I recognized her immediately. I'd studied her photos enough, but she didn't know me. She was alone, staring at her phone with red-rimmed eyes. Against my better judgment, I approached. "You're Meredith." She looked up confused. Then recognition dawned, followed by terror. "Oh God, you're Sarah." "I am." She started to stand to leave, but I gestured for her to stay. "I'm not here to cause a scene. I guess I wanted to see you in person." We stared at each other awkwardly. Up close, she looked younger, more vulnerable than in her photos. I could see what David had been drawn to. She was beautiful, but more than that, she radiated the kind of optimism I'd lost years ago. The kind I'd had when David and I first met. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know that doesn't mean anything, but I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Not until it was too late." "When did he tell you?" "The night before we left for the Maldives. He said you were separated, that the divorce was almost final, that you'd been living separate lives for years." She laughed bitterly. I was an idiot to believe him. He's convincing when he wants to be. The wedding wasn't even my idea. My parents orchestrated the whole thing. They were so excited I'd finally found someone. She trailed off, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I found out about you the real truth when we got back. A mutual friend saw the photos and told me everything. I left him that day." I felt an unexpected wave of sympathy for her. We'd both been deceived by the same man, just in different ways. "Good for you." He keeps calling, texting, showing up at my work. He says he's getting divorced now that we can be together properly. She looked at me pleadingly. "Is that true?" "The divorce is almost final, yes. What you do with that information is up to you." She shook her head firmly. I could never trust him again. How could I, knowing what he did to you, knowing he could do the same to me? We sat in silence for a moment. Then she asked, "How do you move on from something like this?" "One day at a time," I said honestly. "Some days are harder than others, but it gets easier." We parted ways without exchanging numbers or making promises to keep in touch. We didn't need to. We'd shared something profound, the experience of being betrayed by someone we loved, and that was enough. A year after discovering the photos, I stood in my backyard, admiring the garden renovation I'd finally completed. The raised beds were full of vegetables, the fruit trees were thriving, and the chicken coop I'd always wanted. But David had vetoed housed 6 happy hens. Emma was visiting, helping me harvest tomatoes for sauce. "You know," she said, "this place looks better than ever. It's like it was always meant to be yours alone." She was right. I'd reclaimed every corner of the house, replacing memories of us with new ones that were entirely mine. The bedroom was painted a deep blue David would have hated. The garage he'd used as storage was now my art studio. His home office had become a foster room for dogs from the local shelter. "I got an interesting email yesterday," I told Emma as we worked. "From Meredith Yang." Emma's eyebrows shot up. "Seriously." She wanted to let me know that David's been harassing her. Apparently he's convinced they're meant to be together. She's had to get a restraining order. Wow. So he blew up his entire life for someone who wants nothing to do with him. And seems like it. I felt a grim satisfaction at the justice of it all. She also mentioned he's been fired from his firm. Something about misusing client funds to pay for the Maldives trip. Yeah, karma's a bitch. That she is. As we carried our harvest inside, my phone buzzed with a text from Ryan, the veterinarian I'd been seeing for the past few months. Nothing serious yet, just dinner dates and long walks with our dogs. But it was nice, easy, honest. "A new boyfriend," Emma teased, seeing my smile. Maybe. We're taking it slow." I'd been upfront with Ryan about my past, about my trust issues, and the spectacular way my marriage had ended. He'd been patient, understanding, never pushing for more than I was ready to give. That night, as I cooked dinner with tomatoes from my garden in my house, that was now truly mine, I thought about the strange journey that had brought me here. The devastating betrayal that had shattered my life had also, in a way, set me free. Free from a marriage that had been dying slowly, even if I hadn't wanted to see it. Free from the suffocating politeness that had kept us both trapped. Free to build a life that was entirely authentically mine. I still had bad days. Triggers that would catch me off guard: a song on the radio, the smell of his cologne in a department store, the phantom vibration of a text that used to say he'd be home late. But they were becoming rarer, the pain dulling to an old ache rather than a fresh wound. My therapist called it post-traumatic growth. The idea that sometimes when everything falls apart, we have the opportunity to rebuild ourselves stronger than before. I'd rolled my eyes when she first said it. It sounded like something from a self-help book. But standing in my kitchen surrounded by evidence of the life I'd built from the ashes of my marriage, I understood what she meant. My phone rang, David's ringtone. I'd never changed it, some part of me always expecting him to call, to grovel, to beg for another chance. For a moment I considered answering, hearing what excuse he'd concocted this time, what elaborate lie he'd spin to try to win me back. Instead, I declined the call and blocked his number. Then I deleted his contact, entirely erasing the last trace of him from my phone. It was time. Later that evening, Ryan came over with his golden retriever, Bailey. We sat on the back porch, watching the dogs play in the yard as the sun set. He didn't know the significance of this particular day, the anniversary of when my world had imploded. I hadn't told him, hadn't wanted to give that date any more power than it already held. "The garden looks amazing," he said, surveying my handiwork. "You've really transformed this place." "Thanks, it's been a labor of love." And it had been. Every planted seed, every pulled weed, every small victory in making things grow had been a step toward healing. "I was thinking," Ryan said, his voice careful, "my lease is up in a few months. I know we said we were taking things slow, but maybe we could talk about next steps." A year ago, the suggestion would have sent me into a panic. The idea of trusting someone enough to share my space again, to intertwine our lives, would have been unthinkable. But now, looking at this kind, patient man, who'd never given me reason to doubt him, who'd shown me through actions rather than words that love could be steady and sure, I felt only a flutter of nervous excitement. "Let's talk about it," I said, taking his hand. "But fair warning, I'm not giving up the chickens." He laughed. "I wouldn't dream of asking you to." As we sat there, fingers intertwined, dogs at our feet, I thought about Marcus's Instagram post that had changed everything. "Best surprise wedding ever," he'd written. And in the strangest way, he'd been right. That surprise wedding had ended my marriage, shattered my illusions, and forced me to confront truths I'd been avoiding. But it had also given me a life I'd chosen, a home that was truly mine, and the knowledge that I could survive anything. Even the discovery that the person I trusted most in the world was capable of the cruelest deception. The notification sound on my phone made me tense reflexively, that Pavlovian response to late-night messages still ingrained. But it was just Emma sending photos from her day at the beach with her kids. Normal life moving forward the way it always does. I showed Ryan the photos, told him stories about my nephews, made plans for them to visit next month. Simple things, true things, the building blocks of a life based on honesty rather than elaborate deceptions. As the stars came out, I found myself thinking one last time about David and Meredith, about fake business trips and surprise weddings, about the spectacular ways we sometimes destroy the things we claim to love. Somewhere out there, David was probably spinning new lies to someone new, constructing another elaborate fiction, rather than facing the truth of who he was. But that wasn't my problem anymore. My problem was deciding whether to plant pumpkins or squash in the empty garden bed, whether to adopt another foster dog, whether to take the leap and let Ryan further into my carefully reconstructed life. Good problems, real problems. The kind that come from building something genuine rather than maintaining a facade. The dogs came bounding over Bailey, dropping a slobbery tennis ball at our feet. Ryan threw it into the gathering darkness, and we watched them chase after it, barking joyfully. Life moving forward moment by moment, choice by choice. "Thank you," I said suddenly. "For what?" Ryan asked, surprised. "For being patient, for understanding why I need to move slowly, for being real." He squeezed my hand. "Thank you for being willing to try again. That takes real courage." Maybe it did. Or maybe it just took the knowledge that the alternative, living in fear, closing myself off, letting David's betrayal define my capacity for trust, was worse than the risk of being hurt again. As we headed inside, leaving the ghosts of the past in the garden where they belonged, I realized that this was what moving on looked like. Not a dramatic moment of closure or forgiveness, but 1,000 small choices to keep building, keep growing, keep believing that not everyone would choose deception over difficult truths. The house was warm and full of life, so different from those empty nights when I'd waited for David to come home, from trips that weren't trips, meetings that weren't meetings. Now it was full of my truth, my choices, my future. And that future, whatever it held, would be built on solid ground. No more lies, no more pretense, no more accepting less than complete honesty. I'd learned that lesson in the hardest possible way through Instagram posts at 2:47 a.m. and the discovery that the person sharing my bed was capable of maintaining an entirely separate life. But I'd survived it. More than survived, I'd rebuilt stronger and more authentically myself than I'd ever been in my marriage. And if that wasn't a happy ending, it was at least an honest beginning. The story of my marriage had ended with a surprise wedding in the Maldives. But my story, my real story, was just beginning.